Basket.
The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it, weekend editions here. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, and Elijah Herbel. Hope you're doing okay. We'll get to our roll call, our shout-outs here in the stream, and we invite you to check out the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, subscribe, and like, tell a friend. Also, give us a follow on the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. KFOR Twitter, KFOR Facebook, and of course Spotify, iTunes, Google Play for the podcast. Fellas, how we doing? We are about to get that corner turned on February. Let's get downhill. Let's get into some warmer weather. Let's get closer to spring football. Yeah, first things first, though, which it's nice that the baseball got off to a great start. Husker Baseball 1-0 as they get ready for Texas Tech today at 3. Nebraska Basketball tips off at 11. So grab your Bloody Mary or just a cup of coffee with Jack Daniels in it if you're Elijah, and get ready for an 11 a.m. tip. Kraynak, good to see you. I love the fact you are all ready for the Daytona 500 on Sunday. And let's reset this before we give our shout-outs with the shirt, the story, and listeners are the best. We love them.
Yeah, help reset this, Elijah, because the shirt actually came to you, right? Is that how it worked?
Yeah. So we got it sent to us, and this comes from Eric, who says, hell yeah, as soon as he sees the shirt on you. We appreciate Eric. And Eric, I'm not sure if you're participating in the Daytona 500 tomorrow, but if you are, good luck. He sends us this shirt, an old racing shirt that he had, I believe, on the Ricky Stenhouse team, because we were talking about it a couple weeks ago on this show, saying, man, we need to have those shirts like the NASCAR folks have where you can just plaster it with sponsors. And Eric comes in and is just a absolute saint by sending us this shirt, sends it from all the way from North Carolina. It comes to us. It is hand-delivered to Mark Kraynak, and now you see it for those watching the video version, either live on YouTube or after the fact on YouTube, wherever you're watching this show. Mark Kraynak is now wearing this shirt. It fit him, which is a good sign. There were some concerns about that. We did the eyeball test last Saturday in front of my house, and it worked, and now we got it on.
Yeah, and Eric responds, he led a bunch of laps in the qualifying duel last night. Got caught up in a little wreck, though, starting in pole 35.
Okay.
Okay. So, and that is about the extent of my knowledge of NASCAR. I know very little about it. Very little. I don't dislike it. I just don't know it. Right. I would like to go to an event at some point.
Oh yeah.
Well,
I've never been. I have
to
some
Daytona.
I have some my buddy Grant. Grant's been talked about enough on this show. So my buddy that was down at Ole Miss, he went to Talladega a couple of times, and boy, Talladega sounds like a time.
Yeah, it kind of does. They all kind of do, don't they?
I think it's a good time.
Yeah, these shirts, the shirts are great because you can plaster a lot of logos on there, and that's, kind of our idea for this show too, for the weekend edition, is that, your business, like we'll just wear shirts, NASCAR style, and just put your logos right on them. Yeah. Like Kleenex is paying nothing for this right now. And yes, the jokes write themselves. I'm kind of glad that this Kleenex logo
Mark
is not
Kraynak,
super visible.
Sponsored by Kleenex.
Is your favorite team the Yankees? No, it isn't. Okay? It is not. Do not like the Yankees. It's the Braves. All right. I know.
It writes itself. So let's get our roll call going. We always shout out our starting five, the first five in the stream. And we do that Monday through Saturday for you. We appreciate you tuning in. Eric checks in. Nick is in second. Walter, we love you, Walter. They're late again.
And let it be known, we can see the times. I know you guys can't see it on your screen watching at home. We can see the times. Everyone comments this. We say 7:45. Walter comments they're late again at 7:44. Now, were we late today? By about 3 minutes. Yes,
there were members. There were members of the team that were in the room at 7:40.
Yeah,
is what we're going to say. Yeah,
absolutely, there were.
There were also members that weren't.
You're right.
Yeah.
So, and
kind of getting sick of it. Kind of getting sick of it, guys. Kind of tired of this crap.
Moonbot checks in at 7. Check that 4. I can't read. Tim in at 5. Judd says, "What's up?" Elijah is in at 7. Judd was 6. Big Al will take 8, and we'll keep giving you the roll calls. Appreciate everybody for checking in, and keep your comments coming in the stream. And guys, let's start off with some football thoughts before we get to Husker baseball and Husker basketball. And pretty good setup, and we'll have Brandon Vogel from Counter Read with us here in about 10 minutes. Vogues does a bi-weekly column with Counter Read, and he loves diving in to the win totals. He loves doing a lot of stuff. He's excellent at it. But the win total number was 7.5 by FanDuel for Nebraska, kind of log jammed in with a number of teams in the Big Ten. Your two, I guess, air quotes, second-tier teams, Penn State and Michigan, were at 9.5 wins projected. Your two top-tier teams, Ohio State and Oregon, at 10.5 wins projected. And the S&P is a measure of what you have with returning production plus predictions. And Nebraska found themselves in at 7.5. There's some turning point ball games that Vogues highlighted, and I thought they were pretty good with 4 of them that I think you can look at as pretty good barometers for Nebraska football. Start out with Colorado. You are at Purdue. You have UCLA. Then you have Wisconsin. Okay. And those 4 are fair. We don't know what Dion and the Buffs are going to be, but man, it'd be deflating to not finally whack those guys. They come to Lincoln this year. Purdue's your first road game. Purdue's a team that's projected to win 4.5. So you should be on the path to starting 6-0 if you're Nebraska. That percentage to do so is only at 27% somehow. Easier said than done. You have UCLA. Listen, there's talent, there's athleticism, but it's UCLA in November. Can you handle a helmet game in November? Nebraska had 4 cracks to get bowl eligible last November, and the effort was there. The result was not. And then you wrap up with Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's your team that you've been chasing for a decade plus. You're not in the West anymore, but can you handle Wisconsin in Lincoln to maybe get a second November win? And Elijah and I chatted about this a little bit yesterday, not a ton. Kraynak, want to get your take. If you're leaning at Nebraska and you look at what you got right now before spring, are you closer to 6-6 or are you closer to 9-3?
Ooh, you had to put it there, didn't you? 9-3. That is 100% that's always where I start, right? Is
that still where you start? Even 20 years later? It's okay.
I know. It's
because I'm so with you. I always in my back of my mind, back pocket, 7 will be okay. 8 will be okay. If you take the microphone away and you put your fanboy hat on. And yeah, because you and I have been conditioned with every molecule in our soul to be a 9-3 football team. That's what we grew up with.
I can talk myself into that every year. And in fact, I do. I think a lot of us do. Like you talk yourself in, well, a lot of returning production. Well, this new quarterback and this new coordinator, this new quarterback's coach, somebody's going to do, it's finally going to all come back around. There's these legacy players. They get it. I don't know, man.
This freshman's going to come in and be an All-American.
Can I cut it right in the middle? Can I cut it right? That's not even possible.
8-4?
No, 7.5. 7.5.
Oh, no, you
no, I can't do that. Oh God. Look, just because they haven't been 500 in forever, I'll just try to put my realistic hat on and I guess 6-6, right? I guess you have to say closer to 6-6 than closer to 9-3. You got a promising home slate, obviously. But come on, true freshman quarterback. A little uncertainty at tailback. I don't think anybody owns that position yet. I know everybody thinks Dowdell, the new Oregon running back, is the second coming, and hey, hopefully he is. Hopefully he is, right? Couldn't crack the roster at Oregon though, right? He couldn't, and that's the competition that we're talking about in the Big Ten. So I like what the defense has. Bullish on Robinson, bullish on Hutmacher. Mm-hmm. You got those two dudes. Those are some stalwarts right there. Love what you have in the secondary. Money. Yeah, secondaries, I think, of very little concern. Out of all the position groups for Nebraska, for the better part of the wandering years, the secondary is generally okay, right? At least okay. Offensive line, God, it's the same freaking offensive line 3 years in a row, just about. Feels like maybe 4. Plus, you get the addition of the new guy from Florida, Mazuka. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yep.
Are we sure about that?
You nailed it.
Okay. Mazuka.
Rhymes with Pazuka.
It does not look
it looks like Mazakua.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
I know. And I've said that multiple times till I finally switched because I just Mazuka.
Yeah, look.
I had the little squirt bottle every single time.
You did. It was called a shock collar.
This is a really specific concern I have with Raiola, though. It is pretty clear when you watch his high school film that Dominic, his dad, probably was saying things along the lines of, you better stand in the pocket and you better deliver. And you're not going to bail out and get squirrely in the pocket because these dudes are blocking for you. You're going to stand in there till the last second and you're going to deliver the ball. And he's taken that to heart, and that's clear. The guy does not have happy feet. However, it's one thing to maybe absorb a blow from a 220-pound high schooler that's at your feet as you're throwing it, and it's another when it's a 280-pound grown man that's coming full speed at you. I think the dude's going to take some hits that he's never taken before because he is going to stand in there, and I think he's going to get crushed a couple times, and I think that's probably going to mess with him a little bit, if not knock him out of the game. I know this is a very specific concern with him.
So Kraynak has already gone down the rabbit hole / fear and loathing section of what can and will go wrong with Nebraska football. You know what I want, man? I want to see, and we just got done watching a really electric finish to the Super Bowl, right? With Patrick Mahomes, and Mahomes making some great throws, and Mahomes running for his life a little bit. I'm anxious to see the mobility portion of Dylan Raiola, where
I'm not sure he has a ton,
but I don't think it's because he can't. We just probably haven't seen it. I don't. He didn't have to. To your point, he hung in the pocket a long time in high school, right? I think he is probably can he scramble as effectively as Mahomes on third down?
I'm not sure he's as fast as Mahomes.
Okay, I don't know. I'm just
have you seen the shirtless pictures from Mahomes at the Super Bowl? Like, that dude is as much as I hate to say it, you look at him, bit of a sneaky athlete, actually.
Mahomes, he makes us. I mean, Mahomes is in way better shape than all of us, but he still makes us feel okay about ourselves.
Bro. Yeah. No, right.
Like one thing about the quarterback position is you don't have to be Lamar Jackson to be mobile. There's varying levels of mobile, and I don't think that he is Heinrich Harburg. I don't think he's Chubba Purdy. But, I mean, we all watched Casey Thompson play quarterback at Nebraska. I don't think Casey Thompson was a hyper-mobile quarterback. But whenever Casey Thompson used his feet, Casey Thompson could go pick up a couple of yards, and Casey Thompson could avoid the rush with relative success.
It's called fast enough.
Yes. It's like getting chased by a grizzly bear. You don't have to be the fastest person in the group. You have to be faster than the slowest person in the group. And that's kind of what I'm saying with, like, you don't have to be the fastest player on the field. You should have to be faster than the D lineman, you know?
If you've got some turf in front of you, Kraynak, just go run to the sticks, brother.
Listen, he can move a little bit, but he would be probably the slowest footed quarterback since Tanner Lee that Nebraska's going to have. I mean, truthfully, Casey Thompson, he gets I don't really understand why people say he was pretty quick.
He could burn a little bit.
Yeah, I thought he could move. He just didn't do it a lot, but yeah, he was pretty quick. He's pretty fast. Raiola, not so much, man. I'm not saying he's slow, but he ain't fast.
So we're talking about Mahomes and Justin's like Tubby.
But when we get back to the win totals,
yes,
it's going to be dependent upon having good stability at the quarterback position. Nebraska upgraded at the receiver spot, right? That's going to help a ton. That's going to be a nice security blanket for Raiola. But my very specific concern with him is standing in there too long and getting crushed a couple times and then losing him for a game or two or something like that, or having him rattled like he really hasn't had to face yet.
Well, you kind of bring up a point
you learn as a freshman, right?
You kind of bring up a point I've been ruminating on this week whenever you talk about the win total. There's a couple of things whenever you look at the win total that is hard to quantify. The first being the impact of a freshman quarterback, knowing that freshman quarterbacks do tend to make mistakes. And Raiola, we don't know exactly what he looks like, but I wouldn't be. I don't think I'm stepping out too far out of my lane here, going too bold by saying we can expect that Dylan Raiola is going to make some freshman mistakes next season. Those are hard to quantify because what happens in a 7-point game whenever you're in your first road game at Purdue, you're up by 7 in the fourth quarter, and Dylan Raiola throws a pick. Like you can play the better football game long, and a freshman quarterback type mistake can really sink you in a game like that. So that's one thing that I've been struggling to quantify, similar with how does he adjust to the college level. Hard to quantify in terms of the win total, and it's hard to get a real feel in the quarterback position. The other thing that I think is difficult to quantify is momentum. Because Husker football has not had momentum in years and years and years whenever you're going through a season. And they have a schedule that I think sets up to be able to give them some momentum. Does that get them to 7 in their first 7? I don't know. Maybe it does. Does it give them a fighting chance on the road against Ohio State after your first 7? That'd be a hell of a lot of momentum. But momentum's a hell of a drug, and it's hard to quantify. And that's another thing I struggle with whenever you evaluate what this season looks like in terms of can they get to 7, can they get to 9, where did they get to?
Brandon Vogel with Counter Read joins us, counterread.com. Vogues, thank you for the gift that keeps on giving this week, and that is your column from Counter Read, counterread.com, and we talk S&P, and we talk projections and win totals, and you look at the 7.5, and I asked Kraynak out of the gate, you're closer to 9 or you're closer to 6. And one reason that he is hesitant, and by the way, are you like Mark and I have a certain age where you just always would start the year at 9? Always start the year at 9 wins.
Well, I mean, I remember looking at this back, I think it was still in the Pelini era, and going back a couple of years, using the actual point spreads that, went off at kickoff time. And it's pretty much what Nebraska was favored in 9 games a year. And that's what it was. And that even had, a little bit of a longer tail, I think, from the years where they deserved to be favored that often into the years where, they were headed towards where Nebraska is in 2024. So some of that's a little bit of, I think, reputation. But, we can talk about that. We can talk about like teams being public teams or getting a lot of action, and those things they're small factors, but they're not big factors. Like Vegas isn't building a model to be inaccurate and be like, well, we think Nebraska's 6 wins good, but we're going to put it at 7.5 because we just expect there's a ton of money. It's not really how it works. They'll adjust. So for this team, closer to 9 or closer to 6, by the SP Plus ratings, which I then, used to extrapolate some point spreads and win probabilities, Nebraska's favored in 8 games. Now, I usually consider anything between kind of a 0.4 win probability and 0.6, which is usually about -4 to +4, to be pretty much toss-up. But what I think what's notable about these first sets of rankings and how they evaluate Nebraska versus the rest of the Big Ten is there's only 3 of those games. One of them's Rutgers, one of them's Wisconsin, and another one's UCLA. And again, like, I don't know what UCLA is going to be. I don't know if I know what USC is going to be. But that's kind of like the big kind of like starting level of what we got from SP Plus this week.
You're on mute, Cowboy.
Not anymore. Nebraska ranks high in returning production. How much is that skewed, though, by, for instance, Harburg, who probably isn't going to start? And, you know, you're starting over at the receiver position, essentially. Tailback wasn't exactly solidified throughout most of the year. I guess I was just a little surprised at the returning production number being so high. Does that include linemen?
Yeah, and linemen are a big piece of that. So the way that Bill Connolly of ESPN does those returning production is it's not just a straight tally; it's weighted. Quarterbacks weighted. I think O-line is weighted the most. So the number of snaps you return on the O-line is important, which, you know, as just people watching football, I think we would all agree with. So Nebraska does pretty well there. The Harburg one is interesting because he was their leading rusher, their leading passer. You get all those numbers back, but what if he's not the starter? You know, are you getting the true value of what's being calculated right now? That's fair to debate. You know, if he sticks it out or if he wins the starting job, then yeah. Or even if he doesn't, you know, it would still have some value to have a player with that experience. What happens at receiver gets interesting because they bring in 2 transfers, and you know this is something everybody's trying to figure out how do you account for that. You basically just add their production in to Nebraska's, both, you know, what the player brings and then what it does to Nebraska's total. So it's weighted in there. But, you know, is Banks the same level of receiver with whoever is throwing to him at Nebraska? That's kind of the big thing when I think about the passing game, is when you have quarterbacks and receivers who have worked together a lot, that's usually where you see the most value. Nebraska can, on paper, show some decent return in production, but it doesn't have that really, you know, unless Harburg's a starter. But even then, you know, 2 of your presumably top guys didn't play at Nebraska last year. Another guy who should be in the mix, and Garcia Castaneda, had 1 catch before he got hurt. So I think you're on the right track, Mark. Nebraska is number 1 in the Big Ten, number 3 nationally in returning production right now by this calculation. And defense does help a lot there too. That makes a good chunk. But it's a little bit, that's more on paper to me, and it goes into SP Plus, but that's more on paper to me than the overall SP Plus ratings.
You know, my big problem with this conversation is, as a whole, the minute we start trusting computer projections over our own gut feelings is the first step towards letting the computers win. You know,
it's Terminator 2.
All right, Elijah, we're gonna have to fight. Do you know that the College Football Playoff Committee has not made any selections would have been any different than the BCS would have made? No, I'm just kidding. I get what you're saying.
You're not kidding. That's
no, Vogues, your tone and mannerisms are scary this morning, Vogues.
No, I mean it is a really interesting question. Like when I think back about the BCS era a lot, and there's something about, I think, just kind of human behavior and being able to blame faceless computers, you know, humming away in a room somewhere, versus I guess people with faces who are just locked up in a room somewhere during college football playoff selection as well.
What about Dion's take? Your returning production? We had 0 production.
It certainly felt that way offensively. Nebraska did gain some yards, so that's what we're talking about, I guess.
I'm excited for, and you know, last week we got to meet Coach Thomas. He seems like a really calm dude that will groom these guys. And we were all talking about, and we listened to Rule's appearance with Reese Davis and Pete Thamel on the College Game Day podcast. And Rule has been asked the same question by a lot of national guys, but he always is just so great at delivering the nuggets, right? And not only with his incremental progress, where he's talking about close losses turning to close wins, turning to big wins. He wasn't freaking out about the win total. Yeah, he wants to win, but he kind of gets the lay of the land part of it, where you're taking your lumps, you're learning in that first year. So with this first year and second year jump, he's really bullish on where they're at. And he's, worst case scenario, man, folks, he's going into this planning on having to use 3 quarterbacks. And that's life in football right now. Can you have 3 good ones?
Well, yeah, and that's the question, and I think it's harder than ever to have 3 good ones.
Or to have 2.
Right. You really got to get the timing and kind of the presumed succession plan just right to even have a shot. You get 2 guys that are both pretty good in the same class, like one of them's leaving, they might battle it out through the spring, and then you name a starter and somebody's gone. And it's hard to blame a player for doing that. It's just, it's the way that it is now. And, I like to take these things like SP Plus and put a number to them because it helps me, I think, like understand what we're actually looking at. But like big picture, what I think you can really do in the off season is kind of, get a chance to see the team during spring football. But what you're looking at is, are conditions favorable for Nebraska to be better, or are they unfavorable? And you can do that for any team in the country. And that largely comes down to your schedule. Are you experienced or inexperienced? Nebraska is experienced this year. Whatever we feel about the level of production they got, they are experienced. You're looking at, has recruiting been at your usual level, better, worse? And then what are your recent results? And Nebraska's recent results haven't been good enough, but they've been, you go to the close losses thing. I'll turn everybody off to everything we just talked about. Nebraska being favored in 8 games by the SP Plus ratings right now. Like, what I'm saying here is, like, in 2019, which people don't want to bring back up. I agree. Like, Nebraska was a little bit hyped, but like a lot of these metrics were saying the same, of like, conditions are favorable here for Nebraska to take a jump. And that was true whether Scott Frost had gone, undefeated in his second year at UCF or gone 500. That would have been the case.
Brandon Vogel with us from Counter Read as we talk Nebraska expected win totals and production. What about the factor of Raiola this year? Maybe not necessarily in terms of your hard numbers, but just an open discussion about who knows if it'll translate from high school. But there are plays on tape that you can watch of Raiola escaping a rush, rolling to the right, planting his foot, literally launching the ball 70 yards in the air, right in the breadbasket of a receiver for a touchdown, like in stride. And I'm just like, you don't see that in the NFL often. There's probably only a handful of guys in the NFL that could physically throw a ball 70 yards, let alone on target. Very few people in college. Like, he has such a unique skill set that I'm sure it's going to stress the numbers and stress the probabilities a little bit, and therefore maybe serve as a little bit of an outlier. Do you think Nebraska has that kind of dude, or are we hyping him up too much in terms of his physical abilities?
Yeah, I always probably skew to the more cautious side there with a player that we haven't seen play at this level yet. But watching some of his film, his senior film, he played at Buford, which is a powerhouse program in Georgia. It's a program that probably has an advantage over most programs it plays, year in and year all season long.
Anthony Grant went there.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we've seen a handful just come to Nebraska, and I mean, their high school roster like populates the SEC, it seems. So there's that piece of it. But watching the Polynesian Bowl, which it's an all-star game. Like you're not getting max effort. Nobody really cares if they win or lose. Like just watching him make some of those throws there, though, like it looks different. And that's the expectation. Like he's a 5-star, right? And we can, be skeptical of recruiting rankings. I sort of am by nature, but it looks different. And I think that's kind of all I'm taking from it at this point. When I was talking with Chris and Elijah earlier about the win totals here, like these win totals are out there without knowing who Nebraska's quarterback is. And I don't think they're being goosed to the positive on the assumption that Dylan Raiola is going to be an all Big Ten player in his first year. He might be. So I think in terms of your biggest variance potential with Nebraska is what level of quarterback player you're going to get. Is he pretty good? I think what you'd expect for a 5-star. Then Nebraska's probably right on track. If it goes worse than that, might have a hard time hitting that 7.5. And if it goes better, then suddenly I think your ceiling gets higher.
There's a couple additions to the roster this year and a couple contextual things to discuss with the offense. So if you look at the offense last year, it seems like the things that improved for Nebraska and the things that were left to be desired. Pass protection improved last year. Like Casey Thompson was under siege the year before. Last year, I wouldn't say it was great pass protection, maybe not even good, but it was serviceable, right? It was okay. And presumably you build on that this year, so that should be better. It seemed like we had pretty regular discussions too, though, about how it seemed like guys were running wide open, but the quarterbacks either didn't see them or physically could not get it there. Maybe that happens every year, but it seems like it happened a little bit more last year than normal. So you got those two things. Presumably Raiola can help close a little bit of the gap there. But then at the receiver position, at the north end of their comparison, I'd say Jamal Banks, his best comp is like a Maurice Purify type. Not great breakaway speed, but pretty unique body, tall, rangy, good in the red zone. And then Nair, I'm not sure if he's back to health. He seems like he might be one of the more athletic receivers, maybe like a Kenny Bell with a few more pounds is maybe a good comparison for him. So you throw those two dudes in, you throw decent pass protection in, you throw quarterback tutelage in to where maybe he doesn't miss those open guys. I mean, are we talking about a potential two touchdown increase in offensive average?
Kraynak's wondering, is the offense going to go from 0 to 60 where they start kicking ass?
Well, no, I mean, but at least hold serve, right? Like last year, they didn't even do that, right? It was
you needed two big plays for 2 touchdowns to even win a game last year.
I mean, that's all you had.
Yeah. I mean, the offense last year was limited in some obvious ways. It had a small table, so to speak, but it still left some things on that tiny table in terms of, and I think particularly in the passing game, and even the complement of plays. Like Nebraska's rush totals ended up looking pretty good. Like I don't remember a ton of games where it just felt like, oh, Nebraska can just run the ball at will. It felt like they were running it because they were committed to it. Which gave them a chance. I mean, you look at the how close really almost all of those games were. Colorado got away from you. Michigan was what it was. But beyond that, like Nebraska was content to just kind of bang away via the run game, sometimes for 3-4 yards a carry, which I know sounds good. Like if you do that 3 times, you get a first down, right? But statistically, like good rushing offenses are better than that. So I think 2 touchdowns better. They were at 18 points a game last year. Like that would put you at 32, which would be a little bit above average. You usually figure 28, 29 points for the average college football offense. It's not out of the question.
18. I like hearing that out loud. It's almost like I'm blocking it out. Like that 18 points a game was their average.
That said, I mean, it's a big jump. You can go back and look. I'm guessing that happens maybe to 2 or 3 teams this season, possibly. And it'd be interesting to look at like what the circumstances were with those teams. But I think you're right. I think I look at Banks as if everything like goes perfectly to these detailed plans we're drawing up here in February. He leads your team in targets. He's your in case of emergency guy, but also your first option on a lot of things. If he's healthy, our best look at him was that big season in Wyoming. I think he averaged almost 17 yards a catch. Like that's kind of your big play guy. And then with guys that we saw,
great plays too.
And with some of the young receivers that we saw this year, Nebraska's not going to lack for, I think, big play options. It's just, and Billy Kemp, I think Billy Kemp did a good job. He was a good addition. He was the guy they needed him to be. It's just, did Nebraska have the level of quarterback play across all 3 guys to get him the ball where he had the chance to have the most success? And that was a little bit hit or miss.
What makes this conversation so difficult in terms of how much better can Nebraska's offense be next year is like what we're seeing this year, this offseason with the Nebraska football team is kind of unprecedented in college football. To get a 5-7 football team, to go get the top high school quarterback in the country with the addition of what the transfer portal has brought college football in recent years, to be able to bring in production there. Like Nebraska realistically could have 2 new starting wide receivers, a new starting quarterback, a new starting running back. We'll see what the Carter Nelson impact looks like, but potentially a new starting tight end, a new starting either left or right guard. You brought in Mazuka. Like the kind of change that Nebraska's offense has seen this offseason is something that has been almost unheard of in college football through its history. I mean, you have to look at the most recent 5 years, and you add to the fact that you've got the top quarterback in the country, adding him to a 5-7 football team. You almost never see that anyway. Like, this offseason, with the potential change offensively for Husker football, is as close to unprecedented as in college football as I think I can remember.
And I think that's part of why I view things as pretty favorable for Nebraska right now, because in terms of, without really most of what you just mentioned, Elijah, in terms of you have that base level of experience. Like if Gabe Ervin, was who we expected to be Nebraska's number 1 running back, and he still might be, who knows, you'd be okay with that. Like if the guy stays healthy, it's looked pretty promising. So in this case, like the additions really get to be additions, particularly I think a receiver at running back, at tight end. The one that stands out is quarterback. It'd be one thing if you had a Casey Thompson type of player here, some real experience, and it's like, okay, Dylan Raiola, go beat him out. And if he does, he does. That tells you he had to be at a pretty high level in what they were seeing in practice. Nebraska doesn't have that situation, which for me is like the real hinge point for everything in 2024.
Mazuka, I know from Florida, also on his Pro Football Focus numbers, from recollection here, much more skewed towards run blocking than pass blocking, which presumably helps your run game. I'm guessing, right? That guy's a monster too, and he plays with a mean streak. The
question is, can he get onto Rule's good side? That's kind of the question right now. The talent is there. We all can see the talent. The coaching staff can see the talent. That's the question with him. I'm not out on him by any means. We've had some comments in about Mazuka in the live stream chat this morning about how, it's this guy, he's in the wrong side of things. Is he this year's Eric Gilbert?
He got put on notice by Rule.
I don't think we should overreact.
Mentioned by last name.
I don't think we should overreact.
In what way? What are we talking about here? Hey, what are we talking about?
Did you miss this?
Fill me in.
So in the press conference, he was asked directly about him, and Rule, in his diplomatic way, made it pretty clear that he was sending a message of like, yeah, we need to step it up. That was my read on it.
It was about as public of a flogging as you get from Rule.
Step it up in a what? He's not working out enough or something. Like what
that was my sense. Like I think he needs to. Well, it kind of came on the heels of talking about Banks and how he's leading the team and all their internal scoring and like going to all these events. And I think
I will find the cut.
Yeah, it was something close to he needs to understand the way that we do things. Something close to that, I think.
So the reputation that Mazuka had coming in that I'd read between the lines was that he wasn't like a teammate favorite by any stretch. He's very much no, I'm here to kill the dude across from me, and that's it. Y'all can shut up.
Well, do you want to hear the cut? I have the cut.
We saw the footage of Mazuka throwing hands on the road at Tennessee at the end of the game.
Yeah.
So the guy's literally a fighter, but here's the cut.
Micah's a talented player. Micah's going to have to do all the things I just talked about. Micah's going to have to understand, like the University of Nebraska, like we work, we grind, we pay the price. It's not about what we did. It's about what we're trying to do. So I love Micah. I've known him since he was in high school. But, Micah's got a way to go in terms of understanding the standards that are here.
Okay.
The tone says it all.
Put on notice. You know what, though? He was a nice – I don't think it's a situation where you are 100% dependent on him, right? So if you can get him to elevate above everybody else, great. But you had enough guys coming back at guard anyways. You got Sledge that's waiting in the wings. You got who else? Latovsky's going to keep coming along. You can slide Corcoran down.
Mm-hmm.
You're okay at guard, I think. Don't you all think? I mean, would you say guard is a super concern and that Mazuka has to work?
No, I don't think so.
I love Jenkins. I love what he was.
Oh God, yeah.
What he had to do because of Pipe's injury, and he came in and played well. Now, Nebraska had some good moments last year despite struggles with getting points. Is break in case of emergency as it got. Nebraska did a nice job of getting guys ready. Was it always a great performance? No, but you saw glimpses, even like Purdy. I mean, look how he came out of the gate against Wisconsin. Who the hell saw that? It's false hope, but I mean, so guys came out and played well. They got folks ready. You just need to have some bridge options, right? When we talk about these new wideouts, we talk about the new running back, you talk about the new guard. Those are good things, guys who've played higher level college football. And from a quarterback standpoint, they understand that, dude, this is our job as a staff, as a quarterback room, as an offensive staff, to come in and get this kid ready. This is, don't waste the opportunity of landing a 5-star. And it's also a reputation maker or breaker. And that's what it is. And you don't have to be Peyton Manning year one, but don't be bad if he goes out and wins the job, folks.
Yeah, I mean it's a big bet, and I felt that way the first time Rule talked about it. About not seeking a transfer beyond that. Now, on February signing day, he kind of indicated that maybe we'll see what's there in the spring portal. But so far, they're not going to hedge it, which is bold because it kind of goes back to the thing we've been talking about this whole segment. Like, it looks like things are primed for. I don't know how good Nebraska is going to be in 2024. I am very confident they'll be better. So it becomes a matter of how big is that step? Is it to put it in the numbers Chris had? Is it to 6? Is it to 9? I think both are in play. That's kind of the situation Nebraska is looking at. And again, the big unknown is just what are you going to get out of the quarterback spot?
Now this year, for the NFL Combine, Nebraska has no invitees. They could get a late ad.
We didn't talk about this all week on the show, actually, Mark. I'm glad you brought it up.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. That's why I'm here. All right. Yeah, I'm trying to help you all with the topics, right, that you should have covered. I'm just kidding. I'm not criticizing. But look, you're bringing in nobody to the NFL Combine. You could get a late ad. That happens sometimes. If it does, Quentin Newsom seems like maybe the guy that would earn that, maybe an Omar Brown. But if you go into next year, and part of that too is you got to win. That helps you get more guys invited, of course. But going into next year, like if we were to like forward ahead in terms of combine level guys, whether they declare for the draft or not, that's a whole nother topic. But in terms of combine level talent, I feel like Nebraska's got more than a handful, right? You start with Robinson, Hutmacher is obviously up there. God, you could pick a couple of guys in the secondary. Gifford,
Benhart,
definitely a guy. And Benhart, right? Go ahead, Elijah.
Something I've been ruminating on for a long time with the whole combine discussion is it about getting guys to the combine in terms of the what do you want to call it? The check on Husker football, the health check, the status report. Is it about combine, or is it about guys that are potential first-round picks? I've said this for a while. The number one sign that Nebraska football is getting closer to where it needs to be is that it is getting guys into that first-round or near first-round range in the NFL draft. And
it's not for like it's quantity and quality. It's both. You want a first or second round guy. Nebraska would have that routinely. They'd have 4 to 6 guys drafted about every year, every other year, and that could range from a Wistrom and Peter in the first round to a Will Shields in the third round, or a guy like Rex Burkhead that went in the 6th round, or a Kenny Bell in the 5th round, or some undrafted guys that made. You just want to see Nebraska dudes back on Sundays, fellas, and you see Levante, and Levante is working on year 78 with Tampa.
Look, I would say out of those guys, the top end dudes that Nebraska has potential first, second round type talent, depending on how Hutmacher carries his weight this year, he's dropped a bunch in wrestling. He could be that dude. He's got superhuman strength, really good stamina now. He didn't have it before. And then I think Tommy Hill, surprisingly, I think we were all pretty out on him for a while, but just in terms of his physical traits and how he'll test, he'll test well. He'll have the 40 time, he'll have the vert, he'll have all of that stuff. His closing speed's pretty legit. So you're probably closing the gap a little bit there. Overall talent wise, Brandon, wouldn't you say, like, is there an area of the team that is of like really big concern, like red alert status, like, oh my God, Nebraska's woefully under talented in fill in the blank position?
I don't think red alert because it's so early for rules still. Like, I would look at the skill positions. A lot of those guys Chris just mentioned, the Burkhead and Anunwa, Kenny Bell, skill position players. And Nebraska hasn't had much chance to develop them. We look at receiver recently at Nebraska. Their successes post Stanley Morgan have been transfers. So there's that piece of it. But overall, I would agree with your group, Mark. Like, I think they've got a couple on both lines. Nebraska's always done pretty well with its secondary players. I mean, I think to Elijah's bigger question, yeah, you want guys who don't have to do all the drills at the combine. They can just opt out. That's what you really want. But I think the Pelini level, like Nebraska's draft production there, where you have your Princes, you have your Sius, but you're kind of all throughout all 3 days. That's a reasonable and a good level for Nebraska to get back to.
I guess just to boil down my thoughts simply, Brandon, here before we get you out, you see guys that are first-round picks from schools with moderate amounts of success. You don't see a lot of schools that consistently generate first-round picks that don't have a high level of success in the college football game.
Yeah, I would agree. And unfortunately, I think that former scenario is probably going away more and more in the transfer portal era. But that, in a way, that's what, to be a first round draft pick out of Western Michigan or something, that's probably more what Matt Rule and staff are trying to do than they are laying Dylan Raiolas. Though you'll certainly take it if you can do the latter.
Bogues, what's happening with Counter Reed? Thanks again for this morning.
Yeah, so finally got through all my off-season level settings. So I think we'll probably dig back into some actual detailed stuff from last season, football-wise. Basketball season, we'll see how today goes. But that's going to offer some intrigue in the weeks ahead, and baseball return. So always plenty on the docket.
Folks, you take care. Enjoy your weekend, bud.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Appreciate it, Brandon. And
the Iron Horse has been hanging tight. Sharpie, how you doing this morning, bud? Good to see you.
Good. How are you boys doing?
We're good. We're off and running. Good day yesterday for Nebraska baseball. We've been chopping up a lot of football this morning with the old FanDuel win-loss numbers or the over-unders.
Hey, how about Nebraska and USC are in the same category in win totals for 2024?
Isn't that cool?
What bizarro world do we live in?
Well, one coach has
beat USC ever.
Yeah.
Have they?
I think they tied them at the Coliseum back in 71. Yeah. 70. The first championship, they tied USC on the road.
Dating back to 1977, Nebraska has a 5-3 record against USC.
Really? I didn't realize. No.
That's not right.
Oh, wait, sorry. Since 69? Is that right? Since 69, I might be right.
So 70, Schmidt's right. So 1970, they tied 21-21.
I think they beat them in 69.
No, they got beat.
Did Nebraska play OJ?
They've never beaten USC.
Did Nebraska play OJ ever?
Oh no, you're right. I've pulled up the correct stat here. USC in the modern era is 4-0-1 against Nebraska. That comes from the USC website, so I can trust this one.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. No, you remember that back-to-back, the home and home in 06-07, and then the bowl game.
Right.
They got beaten the Holiday Bowl shootout 45-42. But how that atmosphere was nuts. It was game day. It was Nebraska. Are you back in 06? That's almost freaking 20 years ago, Sharpie.
I figured out my problem. Nebraska 5-3, 5-3 in men's basketball against USC.
Oh, jeez, come on,
Harold Miner, come on.
I know. I was just gonna say, come on.
What are we doing?
God.
You know what? So the one game, the one game that you remember. Well, there are a couple in there. The bowl game, of course, or the bowl game because. Mike Riley's sitting in the stands, and it's Barney Cotton and Tim Becker just doing whatever they want to do offensively. But the 06 game was let's get in and let's get out. You had a ton of Nebraska fans out in L.A., and Bill Callahan wanted none of that, didn't want to get slaughtered. And then 07, what I remember the most is USC hadn't started school yet, so they came and hung out like in Omaha for a couple of days. Remember they're practicing. God, where did they practice that it got out to the media? And all of a sudden there were these swarm of fans because
were they at Westside or no?
So one of those schools that was large enough to accommodate a college football team. And I remember the story became, they got out that, hey, they're practicing here, and all these fans started to show up. Media started to show up, but they were like a celebrity team. I mean, that was a run of USC had like some recognizable guys, but
you had Will Ferrell and Snoop Dogg. I think they were at Memorial Stadium, weren't they?
Yeah, it was quite the scene. I'm glad they're back to playing each other.
No,
speaking of 07, I want to bring a visual aid into the mix here.
Stanley Havili, the fullback.
So we are showing, if you're just listening here, we are showing an infamous picture in 2007 in Lincoln. Oh, those were the best seats I ever had for a game, by the way. I was 30-yard line, row 12, just let's go. This is
this isn't the picture taken of your seat?
No, this is not.
Okay.
This is a picture of Nebraska just being very gracious hosts as they're wont to do.
First three plays of the drive, Kraynak and Sharpie.
This whole
were fullback dives.
Listen, fellas, this is in the red zone, right? This ball was snapped probably at the 7 or something like that. And the hole is probably, I'm not exaggerating. It's probably 7 yards wide. Would you say that's accurate? Like 7 yards wide.
Yeah, that was a beating that night.
Oh, John David Booty.
That was going to be the trivia question. Who is quarterback number 10? It is John David Booty. His backup that year was Mark Sanchez, the Sanchez.
All right. Well, so you want to have a little fun here. Guess the spread on November 16th at the Coliseum.
8.5
as of right now.
I haven't seen one of those early lines come out, but that'll be that'll be a game of significance on November 16th at the Coliseum.
Well, they upgraded that defensive coordinator at USC. The question is whether or not the practice habits will allow them to yield the benefits of that. Because that's been the whole thing with Lincoln.
Or not.
Yeah, it's been the whole thing with Lincoln Riley's entire tenure. Is they're an outscoria. They're the running Rebs of football, right? Like they don't. I mean, I don't expect them to actually take advantage of that because it's going to mean that they have to sort of compensate for how they like to practice offense. And their offense is deadly. I mean, everybody knows that. But I don't know if they're going to actually turn around into. Do you think that's possible, Gary, with just how Lincoln Riley rolls?
Nope.
Do you think it's possible that they will have a stalwart defense?
Nope. I don't think they can have a stalwart defense the way they play offense.
Yeah.
I just think that's
or practice it.
They are for practicing, and then it comes over to games. I just think they're incapable of having the kind of defense that can win a championship at USC. Now it may change. I mean, they were always tackling for the turnover, and they were just terrible in form tackling. But you have a coach who is so hell bent on building up the greatest offense in the history of college football. You can have a competent defense, but not to win a championship.
Quickly here,
they're a problem.
Out of context, the Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning stream chat I present to you. Out of context.
Well,
wow.
I believe somebody in the chat, Tiger Shark Diver, said that Lizzo could fit through that hole.
And Schmidt's got an added context. I thought it was fun to have it out of context, but
you got to do it. Gary,
could the great line from Terrell Farley after he blocked the punt at Kansas State back in the 90s? And he's up at it's Tuesday in Lincoln. He's at Media Day. Somebody asks him about it, and he says, that hole was so wide, 2 fat women could have fit through it. The whole interview room is dying laughing. You should have seen the Nebraska Sports Information staff. Their face goes white. So he got done because they didn't put him up front very often. So he got done, and like 10 minutes later, he had to come up and apologize. And he goes, I apologize to all the fat women out there.
Good for Farley.
Suffice it to say, he was a requested guy on Tuesdays, never came back in his football career.
Yeah, you did not hear a lot from the guy. You really didn't. That's funny that you bring that up.
Sharpie, a lot going on with
as Charles Barkley would say, I apologize to all the women of San Antonio.
Yep. Them churros. Love them churros. So I'm interested here. We kind of laid out a lot of, 9 wins or 6 wins. And, Kraynak and I and Gary were all of that same era where you kind of just started with 9 for Nebraska. Death, taxes, 9 wins. Well, it's been a long time since you rock and rolled that way. What are some things you feel good about if you're a Nebraska fan for Dylan Raiola to be quarterback 1? Obviously, you got the skill set and the talent, but just from everything that needs to come together, right, for this opportunity to be a reality.
I think you got an old team. I mean, Nebraska on one side of the ball is an older team that doesn't need a lot of teaching. They need refining on defense and to make sure that they have a lot left in the tank when they hit the month of November. No, I think, this upcoming year, and I know why Nebraska's win total is 7.5, and it's tough because it's been a while since Nebraska's gone over their win total, and a lot of it has to do with the schedule. If you go by Bill Connolly's SP Plus, Rutgers is the most difficult team in the first stretch of Nebraska's schedule. And the schedule sets up for a quarterback that is playing for the first time in college, because you're not going to get snowed under early where you lose your confidence. And I mean, let's be honest, we don't expect Dylan to lose much of confidence, but it's a schedule where you can build some confidence before it gets real at the end of October. And I mean real. I'm not overlooking. I think Rutgers will be a challenge. You know, Colorado will be what Colorado is. But there's a lot of things that set up where, Nebraska can hit that win total. But guys, I said this on my show yesterday, and I'm glad you brought it up, Schmidt, of the 9-3. And I think we became really smart because we didn't just say, 9 wins. We wanted to know how those 9 wins were created. In the new Big Ten, where right now the upper tier is pretty well solidified for now, and then there's a lot of teams that are battling for that middle part, and then I think we can see who's at the bottom tier. Will the new 9-3 be 8-4 in the new Big Ten? And you'd be okay with it?
I think you're going to –
because you're playing 9 conference games?
Yeah, here's what I believe. It's going to go – we're trending towards an AFC, NFC, aren't we? 32, 40-some teams.
Yes.
2 divisions. And it is not going to be an undefeated thing anymore. It is going to be, do you make the playoffs? And can you sneak into the playoffs? Do you thunder in at 12-4? I mean, that type of – I think 9-3 is your pole position to be one of the 12, honestly. I mean, I think 9 and a road win. I sound like an NCAA tournament guy here. Sorry, but I think a win or 2, right? Because everyone's going to have killer schedules. I mean, there are going to be helmet games everywhere between the SEC and the Big Ten. Do you end up at 9 or 10, 9 wins, 10 wins to get playoff worthy? And when are those slated? Is the Big Ten going to – we were talking to Barnett about that this week. You play some of those big games early if you're the Big Ten, because you can survive a loss early, and then you make interesting games late in the year, but you can't have that death march in November where it's just stacked upon stacked upon stacked with your schedule, where you're taking USC, Oregon, and Penn State consecutively. It's no fun. That'd be great, but it's not doable. It's not going to get you the playoff. So I think to your question about 8 wins, I think your expectation, I think it's going to be more acceptable. It's going to be weird to see, but if you're playing good football and your schedule is so loaded that, 8-5 with that schedule, I think you can kind of shake your head forward at it. That's how I look at it.
I wonder, Schmidt, if you're arguing about – I still think, based on the current setup, that undefeated is not some unattainable goal. I think it'll become a little bit more rare. You're not going to have 4 teams going into the last week of the regular season that are undefeated. But I don't think until you go a full 12-game conference slate are you going to start getting the rarity of undefeated teams in college football, if you follow what I'm saying. I still think that that's going to be happening, and I don't think 9 is going to get you. I think 10 is going to be that benchmark in the Big Ten to get you. If you get to 10 wins in the Big Ten, that's, I think, the benchmark where it's like, all right, they got a pretty good argument for making it into the college football playoff. But unless you go a full 12-game conference slate, I don't think that you're going to lose teams that are going 12-0 in their regular season in college football.
Guys, they got to hammer out what the 12 are. Is it your conference champions? Yes. But does that mean you get Mountain West or Pac-2 in there? Does it mean you get
you lump all them together for some at-larges?
Right. Well, or do you want an at-large AAC champion in instead of your 4th Big Ten team or your 4th SEC team?
I like their idea of 5 plus 7.
Yeah. Yep.
I will tell you one thing about the playoff that I'm really surprised doesn't get mentioned. I love that we're going to have on-campus games in the first round, but aren't we screwing over the 1 through 4 seed? They fight to be the best teams in college football, and they're going to play a neutral site game against a team that had played the week before. Why can't they play at home? They earn that right.
You gotta slot your bowl partners. I mean, you gotta use the sites.
I understand that, but I don't ever hear that brought up like, hey man, we're the number 1 seed. We were the best team in college football. You don't think we'd like to play at home?
Yeah, let the local economy get a monster bump.
You play for home field advantage.
Sure.
So Gary, when you say 5 plus 7, you're talking about 5 conference champions plus 7 at large. Is that that's what you're saying? So with the Pac-12 falling apart, I know you have SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12. Who's the fifth? Now the Pac-12
the fifth would be the best conference champion out of Group of 5.
Okay, which is probably from the American.
Yeah,
but are people clamoring to? Is ESPN clamoring to pay what $110 million for Liberty and Oregon? Which would have been a 5 versus 12 matchup this year or something along those lines?
Occasionally you get your Tulane USC Sugar Bowl where you're like, how the hell did that happen?
But then you also have the Liberty Oregon game where I'm in Arizona and have tickets and didn't even show up to the game.
Because you can't sell them. You just eat them for $12.
I mean, this is a serious conversation because, ESPN, it's announced that they have reportedly a deal, but then it's announced yesterday that, hey, if they don't get their stuff right, ESPN's not going to hang around, of what the format's going to look like. So they have a couple of years to figure it out. But I think I like the 5 versus 7. But don't kid yourself. It's the Big 10 and the SEC. They got the most money. They got the most influence. They're going to have the most teams in the playoff. And they should.
And if you look at that on a year-to-year basis, on average, say let's project out this 12-team playoff over 10 years. SEC between Georgia, Bama, and LSU, it feels like at least 2 of those 3 are getting in every year, probably.
It's going to be 3 per big dog.
Yeah, right. Big 10, you're probably looking at Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, right? So there's like 6 of your 12 right there. And then outside of that,
And we talked about this with
you got to be 10-2.
I wish we still had Vogel on. We talked about this with Vogel a couple weeks ago, where he did the math and went through it. And essentially, as he kind of said earlier in the show, the college football playoff, the top 4 was pretty much just the BCS top 4 every single year. And if you looked at the BCS models for the top 12 every single year, I think the number in the playoff era of Big 10 teams finishing top 12 was something like 3.7. So in an average year, you're talking between 3 and 4. Like that's what the Big 10 can expect every single year, 3 to 4 teams to make it into a 12-team playoff, which seems about right.
Yeah, I can see that. Big 12's gonna struggle over time. I think we know that. ACC's still gonna be a player with some of the brands that they have right now.
Till they leave.
Yeah, it'll be 3 to 4 from the Big 2.
That's the transition, and we're not even talking about Notre Dame. Is what happens when the ACC headliners leave? I mean, does it make the SEC and the Big Ten stronger? So it essentially becomes down to the SEC and the Big Ten are having their own playoff every year.
Well, I think you can probably reserve 7 spots for the Big Ten and the SEC in the 12-team playoff. That sounds like a healthy number to me.
I agree. I think if you can get to 9-3 in the Big Ten, you could be in the discussion about being in the playoff.
Do you worry about relegation with this super field of 40? You're still in the Big Ten, but your football program has been garbage, so we are gonna slot the top 20 in your own league.
I like the idea of that, but I think what it becomes is, do you want to play big boy football? Do you have the resources to play big boy football? Do you want to play big boy football? And if you don't, you can still play football, but we're going to have a different level where everybody is kind of on the same page because they have $200 million in revenue. You can't get to $200 million in revenue, but we still want to play college football. Well, yeah, we've got this division over here for you. I don't know. These are probably 10, 15 years down the road. But before
we're going to send you to the CFL of college football.
I mean, before you know it's going to be here. That's the thing. Like off the field, man, you get a headache. On the field, it's still the same great sport.
Yeah.
So they have to figure out how to figure out the off-field stuff so that we can get back to focusing on the field because the on-field stuff is fantastic.
I tell
it's
you
getting
what,
better.
Promotion and relegation would make the on-field product just incredible because imagine how crazy the transfer portal would be in the era of relegation and promotion.
Oh my God.
Well, I think it'd be scary because I think there would be some schools that would just say, "Nah, I'm good playing football. It costs too much money."
Yeah.
We don't have a chance. You know what? We'll focus on something else.
Yep. Yeah. Speaking of focusing on something else, Gary?
No, I don't think Husker Sanders should be on the cover of College Football 25.
Oh, my God. Is he going? I'm not buying it if he is. I'm not buying it. If I do, you should be able to change the cover art, right? You should be able to do that. Like that's
I missed that. Who shouldn't be on the cover?
So I was trying to figure out who they're going to put on the cover. Now, like Nick Saban seems to be one of those, but is Nick Saban going to sell to the young kids that look at that and go, "Oh, there's an old man on my video game." So, but think about who would be the most recognizable college football player. That's why I bring up Hurrdat Sanders. I think a lot of people know what he looks like without a helmet on and with a helmet on. They have to put somebody on the cover that's going to sell more games.
I would say the picture of him.
It's an arms race between Prime and his own kid, Shedeur.
Shedeur hitting the watch pose on the cover of NCAA football would be kind of iconic. I can't lie. That might be the pick. If I'm a decision maker with the new college football game, I'm looking at that watch, him pointing at the watch, and I'm going, that's going to sell some copies.
Listen, by the way, I recently got a PS5, and the only game I have right now is MLB The Show. And we can go deep into how on Road to the Show, how Mark Kraynak, center fielder, traded from the Braves to the Yankees, AAA to AA, leading the league in home runs. We can talk about that some other time. But it does bring up baseball, which started yesterday, college baseball. Nebraska down in
Arlington,
down in the Dallas area. And 3 games, played Baylor yesterday, Texas Tech today, tomorrow, Oklahoma. And Gary, we really didn't know coming into this year, like what is, and I feel you, Gary. Gary's having a coughing attack. I was down for the count on Wednesday, man. I don't know if are you just now feeling this, Gary? If so, dude.
No, something went down the wrong pipe. I'm good.
Okay, good. Because I was down for the count Wednesday. So if you need a pinch hitter at the game tonight, you let me know. I haven't done play-by-play in a while. I don't know the roster really well. But if you were down for the count, I got you.
You got to keep these on this time of year. You got to keep these things on deck. Having the studio at all times.
No, sir, I was knocked out, dude. I just slept. It was crazy. But anyways, yesterday we didn't really know how the pitching staff, and it's still going to round into shape. We don't know for sure. But a bit of a surprise, Brett Sears, the senior, draws the equivalent of the Friday night start, right?
Yep.
And performs really well. When you look at the box score, the thing that jumped out to me the most is this already the Childress impact. Nebraska walked nobody yesterday.
Yep.
The whole stat that doesn't that doesn't happen a lot, right? I can't think of when 3 pitchers combined to not walk a soul and they win it 4-1.
That is Rob Childress. That's if you're going to pitch for Rob Childress, you're going to miss bats, you're going to throw strikes, you're going to work quickly, and you're going to be smart in your approach, and all of those things come together. I mean, for the opening game, and there were a lot of strikeouts in the game. For the opening game, I thought it was one of the best pitched Nebraska games I've seen for opening day. Remember, Will on opening weekends is 5-9-1. So it is definitely the Rob Childress effect because look at Drew Christo came and met the media at the beginning of camp. And we thought, okay, Drew will be the Friday guy. And Drew had a great summer. It's now or never for Drew Christo. And I keep telling people, man, I saw him at Elkhorn High. His stuff was electric, but he hasn't had any consistency. So instead of just rolling him out there and going, okay, let's just hope he can make it through opening day, Rob Childress says, no. We're not going to do that to us. We're not going to do it to you. We're going to bring you out of the bullpen because you're struggling right now in February in missing bats and throwing strikes consistently. That's not who I am. And so Brett Sears, who had a great summer, has been that guy and was that guy yesterday. And I mean, what a relief for a program that lost their 2 weekend starters. If you could find a solid Friday night guy, and I think the rotation will be in flux a little bit. And that's not a bad word. It's like trying to figure out, over the next couple of weeks. But you're right. You're spot on, Mark. That's Rob Childress 101 yesterday with their pitching staff. And then you come out of the bullpen and you throw strikes and you don't mess around. How many times last year did we see guys come out of the bullpen and they dinked and they wouldn't throw the ball across the plate? They wouldn't trust their stuff. And then they tried to get too cute and they were walking guys and all of a sudden balls were being crushed. Yeah, that's Will has taken the attention off himself, and it's on Rob Childress, who I've said this for a long time. Of all of the coaches, head coaches and assistant coaches, Rob Childress's Q rating is probably remained the highest of anybody that has been here and left, because we always associate Rob Childress with College World Series. He was the pitching coach for 3 College World Series teams. We don't really ever go, man, Rob's not that good as a pitching coach. We always say, Rob can get it done. And it's one game, but boy, that's a great start and a great sign for your Friday night guy.
Conspiracy theory? Sorry, Chris. I have to ask this because Gary was up in this mix, and then we'll move on. Conspiracy theory. Did Bill Byrne hire Mike Anderson knowing he was taking the A&M job and knowing he was going to take Childress?
No.
Did that happen?
No.
They co-managed, and I think he recognized Rob was the guy to go with him to A&M.
Yes. So, I mean, this story has been told, and this was told to me by Bill and Rob. Bill Byrne approached Rob Childress first, and Rob said, no, Mike is your guy. Mike has been here longer.
Loyalty.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up.
But Rob was approached first.
Mm-hmm. Tinfoil hat removed. Thank you, Gary. Okay.
I want to go to back to the starting pitching. And when we look at Sears kind of toiled Gary last year as a guy out of the bullpen. And from a comfort standpoint, he came from Western Illinois as a guy that was a starter. Did he prove starter worthy because of the offseason, or did Nebraska recognize that, listen, he's more comfortable as a starter? He's got the talent. He's had it. But you got to see it on display yesterday in that starting rotation.
Yeah, you know what? He might have been that way last year. He just didn't. There wasn't a place for him to step up. And even in midweek, they liked him more out of the bullpen. So I think it's just he had an opportunity. They're looking for starters. He went to summer ball. Here's another thing that Rob, and I've been around Rob for a long time. Rob is very good at communicating to his pitchers what he needs out of them. And what they did in the summer is when they sent Brett Sears up to the Northwoods League, they said, first of all, they weren't going to send him to that particular team if he wasn't going to start. And so they said, we need you to start, not extend your arm and inning after inning and just eat innings up during the summer, but we need you to start games, okay? Not come out of the bullpen when there's a dirty inning going on. And so he went with that mindset, and so he developed that. So when he came back to campus in the fall, he was one of their best pitchers. I mean, it's not really a surprise that he is one of the weekend starters and becoming the Friday starter because he's had that mentality. He just didn't – there weren't spots for him last year. Gotcha. But look here's what's different is they have openings because of people that have left the program. Now you're going to see him at a higher level. Remember last year in the Big Ten tournament, Will Walsh?
Yeah.
The way he pitched and you went, whoa, where has that been? Well, now there's an opportunity for him because you're looking for starters, and he's going to get his opportunity this weekend. So Rob does a really good job of communication, man. I will tell you, after seeing that for a long time firsthand, he's hard on guys. I mean, he rides guys because he has a huge expectation level. But if you meet that expectation level, you're talking the same language with Rob. And, man, you can live in the same world. And if you do, you have outings like Brett Sears, who's going to get another opportunity. Or if you come out of the bullpen and you do what is asked of you, sometimes you might throw the ball over the plate because you're trying to throw strikes and a guy hits it 460 feet. But as long as you're doing your job, you're going to get an opportunity to continue to do your job. And I think the communication this year from pitching coach to what is expected is going to be much better and will help some guys that were probably on milk cartons in the last couple of years.
Who goes today? Who's going today? Is it Walsh?
It's Clark today, I believe, right?
I know. I think he's Sunday. Caleb Clark, which
I think it's Walsh today.
Okay, then it's Walsh today, Clark tomorrow.
So Clark, speaking of Childress and kind of how he rolls, let's rewind to Clark, where a lot of the talk going into the year was Clark might have ascended to be the top guy, right? Like going into the year, It's like, wow, this freshman is really taking command, taking control. And then he gets into games and he just got shelled last year. I don't know exactly what it was, but he fell out of favor really quick. Is he the type of guy too? He obviously has the raw tools if he was able to ascend to potentially being your top guy as a true freshman, but then it fell apart. Is that a guy that also is sort of like tailor-made for someone like Childress?
Well, I think yes, and I think it's a little bit about Clark. So last year, he showed up as a freshman, and he had a lot on his resume, and we went, whoa. He got through high school by throwing a pitch and a half, and he could dominate high school hitters. He got to college, and kind of like Drew Christo did his first fall in Lincoln, got reminded that college hitters are a little bit better than your 1 through 9 high school lineup. And so you get exposed. And so the thing with Dylan last year is he only had 1.5 pitches. He had no confidence in that half pitch.
Four-seamer and a change or something?
Yeah, so he could throw his fastball, but he had no confidence in the other pitch, and he got lit up like a monkey. And so his first 3 starts, you remember, they were like, this ain't working out. He got relegated to the bullpen and then kind of disappeared. So Rob watched that, and he knew that you need this kid in your rotation. We got to work with him. He's going to take the mound today, and he's going to have 3 pitches that he has confidence in, and that goes a long way because you don't have to just rely on your fastball. Again, Rob is a great communicator. He's also a great observer. He can see if mechanics are wrong right away, or he thinks like his pitchers, which I think is huge for great pitching coaches, college, high school, pros. If they think like their pitcher, they're in a great spot, and Rob does that. So Clark is one to watch today on his development because he'll throw 3 pitches. He'll throw 3 pitches for strikes, and you'll be like, where was that at? Well, he grew up in the college game, and now someone's making sure that you need to throw strikes. You can't just have a fastball in college baseball, or that fastball is going to be sitting in the bleachers as a souvenir.
Now, a guy I'm curious if we see this weekend, I don't know how to put this in the conversation well. It's just a piece of research that I did that I want to bring light to. Jackson Brockett. Be curious if we see him coming out of the bullpen because they played around with him as a starter last year. He made something just under 20 appearances, I think like 8 starts. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but they played around with it. Sounds like he's back to a bullpen, and it should be noted this Husker pitching staff, especially the starters, are going to kind of be in flux until you start Big Ten play. They're going to play around with some things, so we'll see who the 3 weekend starters are by the time like mid to late March rolls around. But Jackson Brockett, do you guys know he also went to Buford High School in Georgia? There's your fun fact of the day. Nebraska's had a real pipeline going there from Gabe Irvin, along with Anthony Grant, Dan Raiola, and now Jackson Brockett on the baseball team. Also went to Buford High in Georgia. How about
Can we cue up Ray Charles? Can we just play a little Ray? Sharpie, I want to go to basketball here and get your thoughts on Penn State, Nebraska today, and just overall your confidence level. Where is the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp, putting his poker chips here on Nebraska and these final 7, this stretch run?
I'm gonna play the bad sports talk radio guy. I think it's important just for Nebraska to focus on today. We can do that as fans because we're doing the math. Okay, if they go 4-2, if 2 of those are road games, that's going to get them in the tournament as long as they don't have a bad performance in Minneapolis. But here's the thing that will be interesting for Nebraska, that they have not encountered this since Hoiberg's been the head coach. Any loss from here on out is a bad loss for Nebraska.
It submarines their resume.
Because all of a sudden you go, oh, bubble, that's a bad loss. Every loss from here on out is a bad loss, even if Nebraska has struggled on the road, or they're going to face a team today that, they're going to get after you, and they play a really unorthodox physical style. They whine a lot. I mean, Penn State complains a lot, but man, when they're going, they will guard you, and they will make it a really, really physical basketball game. And the next thing you know, you turn it over, and it ends up at the other end in buckets. I think it's important for Nebraska. First of all, a good start today. They haven't played for a week. A good start today, and they play with the energy that they played against Michigan. I don't expect them to throw a knockout punch right away, but play with energy, play smart, try and match Penn State's physicality, and then use Pinnacle Bank Arena to your advantage. If you can, because it's going to be 11 a.m. It could be a little bit sleepy, but fans haven't seen basketball in a week. But Nebraska needs to take one game at a time because you'll hear it Every loss is a bad loss. And these guys have never experienced that since they've been at Nebraska. But, you disappear for a week, and you really don't also have on your resume, there's going to be bubble teams that are in your neighborhood of that 10 or 11 seed. A lot of those teams have games upcoming where it's a good win if they get it. Nebraska really doesn't, for the bracketologists out there, have a good win. They have a couple of good wins for Nebraska, but not if you're looking at a bracket. But I think Nebraska is still in that 10 to 11 range. They just can't play themselves out of the tournament.
The Wisconsin and Purdue wins, the Sparty win, those Nebraska got their work done earlier in the season. So there's no recency with a wow win. You're right. Yep. So is the whole body of work is Nebraska is in that conversation with about anybody, but they can't be this sore thumb as everybody sucks on the road this year. Great. But you can't be the worst of the worst without a road win.
Well,
in conference.
So go ahead and I'll let you guys do the math on how many teams have not won a road game in conference and gone to the NCAA tournament. I'll just wait for your answer.
Zero.
Yeah.
And it's literally zero. And it's thin. I mean, you go down the list of teams that had one road win and two road wins. Homeboy from the World Herald wrote about it.
That'd be Wilson.
Week. Wilson, yeah. I've not had a chance to meet him. Wilson's good stuff.
Homeboy.
Homeboy from the World Herald.
He's my favorite writer. Charles Homeboy. He's the best.
Yeah.
When I see him today, I'll be like, "What's up, homeboy?"
Mr. Wilson. So you going to Penn State, are you?
Nice young kid who's from graduate of Mizzou.
From Missouri, yeah, he's a Mizzou guy.
Homeboy.
Homeboy from 1620 joining us this morning on
the Iron Horse.
The Iron Homeboy.
But a bracket matrix has Nebraska still as an 11 seed. And they are in 103 of the brackets. So they're an NCAA tournament team. It gets kind of interesting as you watch the pieces around you move. You can only move by winning. You're not going to all of a sudden get a big win and move up. You can go down. So it's how Hoiberg handles it, But I think, guys, if Nebraska is really, really sleepy today out of the start of an 11 a.m. game, I'm a little bit worried. Because Penn State's a team as the games where they've been competitive against the upper tier of the Big Ten, they just kind of hung around. You've never been able to put them away because they crash the glass and they press you and they turn you over. But if you're able to, get a little separation early, I like Nebraska today.
Kanye Clary, he's their leading scorer. He's still out, at least according to the availability report today, which is going to help Nebraska a lot. He's a 17-point-a-game guy. So that'll be helpful. But your road games, you're at Indiana, you're at Ohio State, you're at Michigan. Man, there's no game on the schedule where you're like, oh, Nebraska is counted out there.
Well, you have two of those games. You never know what you're getting at the end of the regular season when you go to Ann Arbor. Will that be it for Juwan Howard? We don't know what you're going to get in Columbus on the 29th because of Chris Holtmann not being there. But I think Ohio State will get a little bit of a boost if you're playing for a new coach and you'll play hard because now you got to put some stuff on tape for the portal. I honestly, in my opinion, the matchups are everything. I think the three toughest games left for Nebraska are Rutgers, Minnesota, and a trip to Assembly Hall.
Rutgers because of athleticism in the post.
They're playing well.
And they will beat the crap out of you. Plus, they've won 4 in a row. Now they still have a trip to Mackey and they still have a trip to Minnesota before they play in Lincoln. But in their 4-game winning streak, they have yet to give up more than 60 points in a game. I mean, that's amazing in today's college basketball. And then Minnesota, I am impressed by Ben Johnson. Look at what they did against Purdue. They ran out of gas late, but they were in that game until about 5-6 minutes to go in West Lafayette the other night. And they still got Dawson Garcia. And they're thinking, man, could we make a late run to the tournament or at least get a good seed playing in our hometown in the Big Ten tournament? And then Assembly Hall, you never know what you're going to get out of Indiana.
Yeah, is one of the keys here. I feel like Rink Mass has come around since he got posterized and embarrassed on the road. He's played just a very different brand of basketball overall. Juwan Gary being healthy.
He's a barometer.
And then just Josiah Alec finally kind of playing up to maybe like what his promise was all along. I mean, he's a Rodman type, right? He's just that's going to be his value
effort,
to the
energy.
team. Yeah, effort, energy guy. He looks kind of awkward when he scores, but if it goes in, great. It feels like Gary and Alec in particular, if Nebraska is going to make this run, they have to take it up a notch in and around the post. What would you say is Nebraska's? That to me, that's Nebraska's key to go from bubble to in. Those two guys, they're good now, but I think they almost need to find even another gear because Nebraska needs it that much.
Well, I think
the glass.
I think they need to find a way for Juwan Gary to be on the floor more than he's been on the floor. Mm-hmm. There are times where, I mean, it's pretty evident when he's not on the floor that Nebraska misses him. I will tell you this. We all know that Mast is, maybe the most important guy for Nebraska when you lead in points, rebounds, and assists. I think Rink Mast passing the basketball will be the key in the last 6 games. From that high post, against Rutgers, there were opportunities for him to get rid of the basketball and run the play that was called, and he didn't. Or he was late throwing the ball and it ended in a turnover, or it ended up in a bad possession. Man, I saw Rink Mast out of the high post be able to be a facilitator passing the basketball, which also helped him. I think that's a huge key for Nebraska, is that they're passing the ball, they spread the floor, and they open up some opportunities. When they pass the ball well and they share the sugar, that's when Tominaga finds a spot where he's open, and boom, the ball is up in the air.
Sharpie and Gary Sharp with us, a weekend edition. It's Hail Varsity. I want to kind of wind down and get your take here on what you believe with Creighton, with Mac, with Ohio State, and kind of,
Coach McDermott, you're talking?
The short list. I know we're a kind of a Nebraska show, but I love the carousel. I love kind of seeing what's up with that and the Ohio State job as a whole. I mean, they've been to a lot of Final Fours the last 25 years. They've also punted coaches that didn't do that about every other year, it felt like,
Well, here's the thing. Indiana, Ohio State, and Michigan, look at their postseason success since 2016. There ain't much in there. Michigan went to the Elite Eight not too long ago. The rest it's been a dry January, February, March, April. Yeah. It's a job where could it be Alabama? Alabama is this mega football power that did put some money into basketball and made a hire that has worked out in Nate Oates. If they dedicate resources to basketball, which they already do, I think it's a good job. It's just, Chris Holtmann is one of those nice guys that everybody likes in the business, but knew at the end was near. It got really stale. Butts and seats were not there. So I think it's a good job. It's got an NBA arena that you play in. It's the Ohio State. If they commit resources to basketball, then it becomes a really good job. The main key in this pursuit, and Greg McDermott, his name should be attached. He's a guy that's one of the better coaches in the country, and you're looking for an offensive coach, you're calling the 402. But the biggest thing here, why Mac is drawn into this, is Ted Carter is running the show. Yep. What did Ted Carter do? Where did he live? He lived in the state of Nebraska. Ted Carter loves sports. He was keenly aware that program in Omaha, in downtown Omaha, is really, really good. And so but I also expect, and it doesn't mean just because you're pursued that you're going to take the job. I expect Mac, to be a popular guy in the offseason because Arizona State could open up. There's another one. I mean, if you're a good athletic director, you've got a top level tier that you're going to approach, and Mac should be on that if you're Ohio State. But there's also Sean Miller, Lamont Paris, maybe Nate Oates because he's been in the football school.
I look at Mick Cronin, get the hell out of UCLA, which is weird. And then I think the guy I really like, and I know he's older, but he kicked ass, is Beeline. He wants back in, clearly.
Yeah, it doesn't do in places like Omaha and Columbia, South Carolina, and wherever else, and Cincinnati with Sean Miller. It doesn't do you any favors when a job where your name is attached to fires their coach before Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be a lot of noise between now and then.
And how do you deal with
What do you think McDermott's motivation is, though? I mean, because, look, in the past, Creighton's considered a mid-major, but not anymore. It's Big East high major. What is his motivation? Do you think he's intrigued by? Is he chasing a check? Is he getting along with his AD?
I think it's
right
respect.
now?
It's got to be respect level.
Yeah. We don't know. He's going to be 59 in November. He is not paid as much as Hoiberg is, and it's not like Hoiberg is at the top of the food chain in the Big Ten. I think there's a lot of things. You're towards the end of your career. Do you want one more run at it at a Power 5 football school, or are you, you're happy with what you've built here at Creighton? I don't know. We don't know that exactly of what Mac wants. They've got an opportunity to finish this year strong, but then look at next year. I mean, they're going to lose a big 3. So we'll see. But Elijah's right. I saw what Elijah was doing. Guys want to be taken care of. They want to have some security financially. And if, that's what Mac wants, then a place like Ohio State can provide it because they've got TV money. That's the thing with basketball and the Big East Conference. If a Big Ten school comes calling or an SEC, they don't have that kind of TV money. We all in those conferences do.
Mm-hmm. It would make the Big Ten more interesting. There aren't a ton of high-flying offenses in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and Mac
change the dynamic.
And Mac is a Midwestern fit for Columbus. Yeah. That's another appealing quality. But I think Ohio State will have some good opportunity to fill that role. I like Chris Holtmann. The rise and fall of Chris Holtmann was pretty fast, but they were stale. I mean, we watched him in Lincoln a couple of weeks ago, and there was just nothing there, and people stopped going to the games, and then you blew an 18-point lead to a mediocre Indiana team. The writing was on the wall. I was just really surprised they did it now instead of waiting to the end of the year. They must have been like, wow, nobody's coming to the games. Boosters are knocking on the door, and they're irate. We got to make a move.
Yeah.
Sharpie, have yourself a weekend, man. Appreciate you jumping
This
in.
is a great day of basketball. We got college baseball going on. I mean, you guys didn't even bring up that the Chiefs won the Super Bowl.
We got Tottenham Wolves going right now, some 9 a.m. Premier League start.
I'm glad I'm recording that because I got to go to Lincoln and watch basketball today. I'll come home later tonight and watch it.
Nice. Sharpie, are you going red beer, Bloody Mary, Irish coffee? What is your poison of choice here pre-11 a.m. for basketball?
You know what? I'm supporting my guys at Cross Drain. I will probably go with the Cornhead Lager.
Nice.
The NIL beer for Nebraska. That seems like an 11 a.m. That tastes good.
Yeah. May I also recommend Cross Drain?
I will find out.
Their Fairy Nectar. They don't pay for the shout-outs on that, but man, that's a good beer.
Yeah.
Dr. Rob and Fairy Nectar.
I've never heard of Fairy Nectar. Is it very popular? I've never seen it.
Well, hey, quick question on the way. Is that Nebraska's best chance at the Boulevard equivalent, right? Like Kansas City struck gold with Boulevard wheat that totally transformed that entire company. It's a regional powerhouse. What is Nebraska's best chance to break through? I think it is Fairy Nectar. I think it's
Fairy Nectar is good. I think our friends at Zipline and Copper Alt are money. But Cornhead Lager.
If you had to pick one beer that could break through and end up on taps in Springfield, Missouri.
You've read, Nebraska Brewing Company, the Cardinal Pale Ale is fire as well. That's a great beer.
I'll be straight with you. Aside from our lovable sponsor, Cornhead Lager, and we do love you, I'm more of a whiskey. I mean, I just drink whiskey now.
Yeah, right.
Old man. I'm surprised you're not wearing your smoking jacket.
But if you had to pick one beer that's going to break through, what are y'all picking? One beer that's going to break through and represent Nebraska and take the craft beer world by storm, at least in the Midwest. I think Fairy Nectar is your best shot.
Fairy Nectar is a unique beer. Like Vanilla Bean Blonde is really popular in Omaha.
That's money.
But it's good. But there's probably other ones that are out there. I think Fairy Nectar is your one.
There's so many good ones to choose from, and I don't want to leave any off the list. I love Kincaidor and their Snow Beast. The Snow Beast is great.
Snow Beast is awesome.
Nebraska Brewing Company with the Cardinal Pale Ale, fantastic. Zipline with the Copper Alt's great. Cross Drain with the Fairy Nectar.
Why don't we ever drink on this show?
That is a great point, Gary. I'm so glad you brought this up.
You know what? I would get up, but I'm not wearing pants. I would go and get Cornhead Lager. Just being honest, man.
We're spared the puppet show. Thank you.
Yeah, that camera hits you at the wrong spot.
I'd say the number one reason why I don't drink on this show is some of us have things they want to get done on a Saturday, and they don't want to completely derail that at 7:45 in the morning. But hey, maybe like if it's a one-off thing.
Hey, some of us are pros. You're a rookie. I get
it. Totally. I love it.
Some of us just like having a little bit more fun.
Makes it a little more dangerous and entertaining.
Hey, what do you think, Kraynak, Ryan Blaney? Is he going to go back-to-back?
Are you talking in NASCAR?
No, I'm talking about your shirt.
So
tell Gary the story of this.
You're either golfing or you're headed to Daytona after this segment.
No, this is great, actually. So we have a
shirt. Do you know the story behind the shirt, Gary?
We'll tell the story again, and we kind of laid it out for the stream listeners earlier, but we'll reset it. So if you're just joining us,
this is something.
Is authentic.
This is legit.
That is race worn from the crew team of Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who won the Daytona 500 a year ago, back in 2023. He's starting in P35 here this Sunday. Started P32 last year, won it all. Anyway, Ricky Stenhouse is no longer sponsored by Kleenex, so our listener Eric, who works on Ricky Stenhouse's crew, as we were talking about getting a sponsorship shirt, he was listening and said, "Hey, I got an old crew shirt. If you guys want it, I'll send it your way." So that is an authentic crew-worn Ricky Stenhouse crew shirt. And if I remember correctly, Eric's a mechanic on that team and is down in Daytona right now. And he has since left the stream based on the schedule I've seen. There's some practice rounds going down today that I'm sure Eric is going to be busy on. So,
that's fantastic.
Eric, we tip our cap to you for sending that shirt.
Appreciate you, Eric.
And that is awesome. So it is authentic. That is not some fan replica knockoff. That is authentic. That was worn down in the pits for a season in NASCAR.
Isn't that crazy? Right? Kleenex is the main one. I'm just glad that isn't like super visible because those jokes write themselves. I'm just staying out of that. I got Continental over here too. Thomas Bagels, Totino's, Drumsticks. I don't know. We just think it's a way to attract sponsorship, and we're just trying to explain to our listeners and business owners we can grow your business with something like this. Right?
I like it. Yeah. I mean, we can all have stuff. We all wear hats. We can have our hats all. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been saying for a while. We need big hats for like sponsors.
Like the Jim Carrey cowboy hat, hat?
No, you've seen like the people wear their stupid big hats, They look really dumb. It's like the ball caps that are just giant, oversized. I think Brian Robinson made it famous down in the locker room for the Redskins. He had a friend who made him big.
I think we could also figure out a way to each bring our sponsor with us to our own little square, like Hollywood Squares. We have 4 of them. And we have an icon right above Gary's right shoulder that says Templeton Rye.
Yes.
Here, I got a picture of here. Let me pull up a picture of the big hats, and Schmidt, we can get your take on this in terms of if this would be worth our while. Give me just 1 second. It's uploading.
My take is, unfortunately, a lot of Saturday mornings I unwillingly. Oh my God, no!
Hey, wait a minute. That's not Schmitty.
No,
that is off-brand Kanye West. That's who that is.
All right. Well,
jeez.
Yeah, maybe we got to move on there. Okay.
Yeah, that is not me. Sharpie, enjoy your hoops today, buddy.
Hey, thanks, guys. Great show as always. Always enjoy it. Have a great weekend. And don't forget to honor your favorite president on Monday.
For sure. We'll do it.
Oh,
we will do that.
We got to talk about who our favorite president is on Monday.
No, we're leaving. All right,
Thanks, guys.
See you.
Appreciate you, Gary.
Kraynak, be good, brother. Appreciate you for coming in, as always.
Y'all, too. Hey, shout out to Eric. Appreciate the top. This is good. It'll come back.
Sure. Mark, who's your favorite president?
We're leaving. We're
FDR.
FDR. Nice work. Elijah, we'll talk soon. Appreciate you. We'll be back Monday at 4. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, podcast where you get us on those platforms. Hail Varsity YouTube channel. And thanks for tuning in to Hail Varsity Weekend Edition.